This is a cooking podcast.
Here, it's a safe space where we get to trade supernatural stories, and then we'll ask the experts what they think that was all about. So, we're going to take it step by step. A little bit about me. I'm a television producer, formerly a reality television producer. My first job in television, though, was in news. What that means is that I have it ingrained in me to always look for the what, when, where, and why of everything. And it makes me very cynical about a lot of things going into situations. So, you're always trained to, doubt everything, dig for answers everywhere you go. So about 5 years ago, I was working on a reality show about ghosts. So what that means is basically a group of women would go to people's houses or businesses, and they were mediums, and they would try and locate the ghost that was bothering the people, and then they would try and get rid of that ghost from the house or the business or whatever. It was all good and great, except I found out very quickly that it wasn't just a show. It was real. I, with my own eyes, would see things move. I would hear things. I would see things. One instance, we went to a house and I saw this humongous orb, like this big, hovering on top of the chimney, and like the Glenda orb, except empty, on top of the chimney, on top of the house. I also saw on that same very night, driving home, there was a huge dark cloud hovering across the street a block away from my house. And then a few nights after that, a man just walked past here. A ghost just walked past this very room, walked across. He had a little old-timey hat, and he had a vest, and he was just chilling and looking at me like, hi, and disappeared into the wall. And so yeah, you once you see with your own eyes, you start to very quickly look for ways to protect yourself and your family. And what does it mean? Where does it come from? Does it mean that they're mean? Does it mean that they're demons? What's going on? So the very best way that I found to basically protect myself from bringing any of that stuff home was asking other people about their experiences. So now I was very interested, really, when we would go to people's houses, asking them, like, what do you experience? What do you think's going on? Because it's scary, especially when you come from a background like I do. Surprise, I'm Mexican. We don't talk about that stuff at home, because if you do, you invite more things to come to your house. Like, you attract more things to come to your house. And I don't know that that's the best way to approach things anymore. We live in a different time where you got to tell your kids stuff. And I want to make sure that I tell my kids the right things. I don't want to scare them, but I don't want to lie to them. But also I want to prepare them, because if I think that if I would have been better prepared for at least knowing what things are, I wouldn't have been so scared, or I would have been prepared to react differently. I don't know. This is what I'm trying to get at here. I'm trying to get answers. And the only way I think I can get to the bottom of anything is to ask questions bluntly. And this is what we're going to do here. Here we're going to be able to ask those questions that normally if you ask out there, you're going to get judged. I'm a Christian, but Christians are the first ones to come at me. They're the first ones to come at anybody who wants to ask real questions like, are they all mean? Are they all bad? Are all ghosts demons? Are, all of those things? Are there angels? Who's protecting us? Is there somebody standing next to me right now? Am I crazy? You get the vibe. So we're going to take it step by step, because it's a lot to digest. It's a lot to talk about. And I honestly think we're going to go on forever with this podcast, because I just started working on this, and already I have 5 episodes that I can't decide what I want to leave and take out, because there's so much information. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is gut feelings, because everybody gets them. I don't care if you're an atheist. I don't care if you're a hardcore Christian. you get gut feelings, and they're called different things if you ask different people. Some people call it prophetic ideas, other people call it, intuition. Whatever it is, I think it's just a natural thing that comes with our bodies, from the factory. We've all had them. It's a basic survival instinct, but where do they come from? How do they enter our conscious? And how do we train ourselves to turn gut feelings into supernatural abilities? It's a lot easier than you think. One specific memory that I have of a gut feeling involves my son. It was his first year of preschool, and he was so little, and he was going to school, and I was worried about everything. On top of me being like a Mexican mom that worries about everything and just goes to worst case scenario, like they're gonna be mean to my kid, they're gonna abuse him, they're gonna all of these things. He's on the autism spectrum, so I had like a little extra reason to worry that he was gonna be okay. So short of me sitting in his class 5 days a week, I had to find a way to like be close enough to not be crying at home and weeping that my baby's at school away from me. So I volunteered for the school program. And in the school program, they let parents like roam the halls and help kids go to the bathroom, that kind of a deal, or lead them to the bathroom. So what that meant for me was that I got to, look in the little window on top of the door to my son's classroom every now and then, so I could just like put my eyes on him and make sure he was okay. It worked for like 3 weeks. It was wonderful. I was like, thank God, I think this is going to work out. It's going to be okay. But then on like start of the 4th week, they started taping shut that little window, and it worried me because I said, well, why don't you want me to look inside? What's going on? At first I thought they were a little creeped out by me looking in, but then I figured like, wait, what are you hiding? And I was getting ready to say something about it until the next day I was going to drop off my kid at school, and then they wouldn't let me in the campus, and I said, what's going on? They said, we can't tell you, just drop off your child. We'll be sending letters at the end of the day. And I was like, what? So I had to fight every urge to pound on the principal's door and demand answers. But I went home and I said, okay, I'm just gonna calm down, I'll take a breath, and then I'm gonna call them. So I go home, I try and get distracted. I know I'm being overreactive, or I think I am, and I want to calm myself down, but I can't shake this feeling that something's wrong. It feels wrong. It feels really weird and wrong. And I said, okay, well, why don't I turn on the TV and just distract my brain a little bit? And I turned on the TV and I turned on the news, and what do I see on the news?
Police say this man, 44-year-old Joaquin Diaz Orgaz, a special education assistant for LAUSD at Sunnybrae Elementary, has been arrested and charged for sexual crimes against students.
There were 2 students that were involved with Mr. Orgaz.
Diaz Orgaz is facing 2 counts of continuous sexual abuse and 1 count of kidnapping for child molesting.
My son's school, breaking news, special education teacher has been arrested. He lied on his application. Turns out he was a child molester. He was a convicted child molester, and he slipped through the cracks, and he was working in my son's classroom as my son's teacher's aide. Thank Jesus that by law you have to have 2 people always with an autism child in California. Otherwise, they could yank your licenses. But there was something definitely wrong. Like, that's a gut feeling, and it's a very real way that God uses to irk us into moving, into taking action, or in at very least into telling us something. Mira, when I tell you that there's levels to gut feelings, Scott here is the neighbor you want to have. He's nosy in all the right places. Scott, tell us your story.
My story begins in San Francisco. After college, I went to live there and started working in the nightclub industry, the entertainment industry, and had a lot of fun, did a lot of shows. I was a performer myself, a drag queen. In big city life, I think a lot of us like, mind your own business, don't get involved, you'll regret it, which I certainly have, I've kind of learned that lesson myself, but originally I come from small town North Carolina, Benson, North Carolina, which I don't know what the population is now, but when I was growing up, it was, definitely less than 1,000 people. So everybody knew each other's business, like it or not, and people see you and they wonder how you doing and where you been. If you're not around, people wonder where you are. And maybe that was still one of the instincts that I had. And one of my neighbors, whose name was Brian Egg, this space used to belong to him. And I inherited it from him, from his estate, sort of. But it's kind of a very twisted story.
Tonight, the mystery involving this missing man, 65-year-old Brian Egg, continues to unfold. Police made a gruesome discovery inside a San Francisco home. A headless body was found stuffed inside a fish tank.
See, he was a fixture in my neighborhood, South of Market. He was always outside walking his dog. He was an animal lover, and he was a plant lover. So many people may have mistakenly thought he was homeless, or because he's like an old hippie guy, a bohemian sort of person. And he had long hair, it was kind of gray, and he was sort of unkempt, but pretty friendly and kind of eccentric. And I would encounter him almost every day when I would come and go. His house was across the street from where I was living. And then I noticed he just suddenly disappeared. And there were more and more suspicious characters coming and going from his house. Now, Brian was gay, as am I, and he was inclined to help street people and maybe people with problems, probably drug addicts, and some of them were pretty out there, and I would see them come and go. But it was up to him who he wanted to have in his house. It's none of my business. So when I noticed that he was gone and these two guys were staying at his place, I started getting more and more suspicious. I think I was the first to kind of raise the alarm, and I was making use of this community bulletin board we had for our neighborhood. It's called Next Door. I think most cities have something like that, where you can just sort of say, post things that are of interest to the community. Maybe there's charity organizations or cleanup, or if you're concerned about crime or something like that. So I had posted on there that Brian has not been seen for weeks, and I don't know what's going on. Is anybody else concerned? And so we kind of got the ball rolling that way. We had called the police already, and they had stopped by, and he was a reclusive sort of person. They're like, well, he didn't answer the door. We had no reason to break into the house. There was some issues about that. Like, what if he was unable to answer the door, obviously, So it's like, even with elderly people or people who are handicapped, they may not be able to answer the door. So that could be a justification to break the door down and go inside. What if the person had fallen and could still be saved and taken to a hospital or something? So it's a fine line. I guess people want to respect someone's privacy, but at the same time, where do you draw the line about if you're incapacitated? If I was incapacitated, I wouldn't mind my house getting, the door being broken down. I mean, to save my life. I think most people would probably feel that same way.
So you called the police, you got your neighbors together, and you still didn't get answers. So then what did you do next?
I was always fascinated by paranormal activity, and I'd never used a Ouija board before. Of course, I was familiar with them, and it just so happened my friend owned this club, South of Market, and he'd been, his employees had been talking about weird things that had been going on in the club. Little chairs would move when their backs would, it's kind of like things you've seen in like the movie Poltergeist, where things would get moved when you turn your back, and lights would come on and off, and stuff that could probably be explained. But it was just, there was a lot of stories were piling up. At the time that I had this Ouija board encounter, our intention was to see if we could make some contact with some of these unseen spirits and find out who they were, why they were not at rest, etc. And also I was trying to see if we could maybe make contact with Brian if he was dead or something, because I didn't believe he would never leave his home. He wasn't that kind of person. He would never go on a vacation. And so these guys were saying things like, he's gone on a vacation. And I'm like, no way. We know this guy. Who do you think you're kidding? That was my main goal. It was basically two things. We were trying to see who was haunting the nightclub and if I could make contact with my friend Brian, because at the time he was still a missing person. And we decided to try our luck and see what happened. Of course, we're all kind of skeptical. And you know how a Ouija board works, is you have a planchette and everybody places their fingers on it. And so we started making contact with someone. We asked him his name and he spelled out C-A-R. And we thought, oh, did he get hit by a car? Whatever, we're trying to figure out what's going on. We asked him, how were you killed? And he spelled out G-U-N. And we're like, oh, now we're not faking this. We established that we weren't moving it ourselves. We were being very, keeping an open mind. So it turned out that there had been a shooting I told you this was a neighborhood. There was a lot of bars in this area. There was a bar right across the street. This is 11th and Folsom Street in San Francisco. And the next, it was on the same street. But the shooting happened across the street from where we were. So C-A-R, it turned out, was Carlo. His name was Carlo Teato, T-E-O-T-O, something like that. We asked him if he knew who shot him, and he said yes, but he didn't give us a name. Yeah, or he didn't spell it, not anything that we could make any sense with. And we kind of wondered, perhaps he doesn't even realize that he's dead, or even pulled it up online. I don't know if you can read that, but it was a story in The Guardian, because he was shot, he was killed by a gun, his name was Carlo, and C-A-R. So we kind of were we thought he got hit by a car, but it's strange. No, it's not an exact science, so we can't say for sure what was going on, but we did, and he was he was young, he was early, maybe 31, maybe 33, but he was from Oakland, which is the East Bay. So, about 6-7 miles away from where we were. And I guess he was just there. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And apparently he was he was trying to help some people that were having a fight. I think he was trying to break up a fight. He ended up getting shot. And it turned out when we tapped into that world, there's just just a lot of traffic out there in the spiritual realm. This spirit kept popping up, Zuzu, or a lot of Z's and X's. And other people have said, that's a demon. A lot of fakers, people that maybe they're even demonic, if you want to call them that want to confuse you and can pretend to be someone else. And it seems like the work of fiction, and I think it's a premise in a lot of sci-fi horror movies. They use that premise, but it was like that Zuzu, or that demon that person that kept popping up, that presence, that entity. And we were asked to spell the name, and it was always Z, a lot of Z's and X's, and I was like, wow, this is creepy.
Hi, Scott. Did you find him? Did you make contact with him? We
didn't get a hold of Brian, as it were. I mean, he was already dead at this point, but he wasn't we weren't able to contact him through the Ouija board.
So just go with me on this, okay? I know it sounds crazy, but just go with me. So I've heard it said that when you're spiritually in tune, or you have the favor on you, you get something like a headlamp on you that only spirits could see. And what I'm getting at is that I don't think it was a coincidence that you felt like a pull, that you felt like an urgency to help your friend. I almost feel like there was something in spirit world that was like, that guy, if we try and talk to that guy, he's gonna know to respond, and he's gonna feel what we're trying to tell him, and he's gonna follow our direction without even knowing that we're giving him direction. I feel like that's what happened to you, and I'm just guessing because, again, we're all exploring gut feelings, right? What happened next? Did you end up finding your friend? What happened with your friend after all?
The final straw came when a forensic cleaning crew came in one of those big vans, and it said, the sort of van that goes to, a homicide or a place where someone has died. So at that point, we did call 911. It was discovered that my friend Brian Egg, whom I was looking for, originally he was killed and he was in his house the whole time. His dead body was there. There's still a lot of unanswered questions about what happened when he was actually murdered. I mean, it had to happen in the house. There's all kinds of theories. I think maybe he must have walked in on these guys while they were going through his things, that they were obviously taking advantage of him financially. They discovered that. The police discovered that his bank accounts had been drained, and while these crazy guys were living there, and I assume they were drug addicts, but they'd done horrible things. They decapitated him and cut off his hands, and they've never been recovered. The hands or the head, and they kept what was left of Brian's body in a big fish tank there in his house. In Brian's case, they arrested the person who was there in the house, and he was charged with another. He was a criminal, sort of a career criminal. I guess he'd stolen money from other people. This person, Lance Silva, who was arrested, had bought a car, and he with Brian's money, and he even tried to pay for the forensic body removal service on Brian's credit card. I mean, it was just outrageous. But he was released. He was never charged. And they'd done a tremendous amount of cleaning up, which I saw myself. I would see them, soapy water come pouring out the front door and and then they would sweep it down into the storm drain right there on Clara Street. We lived on Clara Street in San Francisco. And Brian's house is still there. It's abandoned. And I think we're all just looking for answers. I'm still looking for answers, trying to find meaning and purpose.
I'm so sorry for your loss and your friend's family's loss. Scott, where are you spiritually? Do you go to church? Do you subscribe to any faith? Do you believe in God? What is your spiritual background like?
That's an interesting question, because I think I continue to be a seeker of knowledge about these things, because life is so mysterious. And I've been so angry these past few years at the insanity that we endure on a daily basis. Not just the shootings, not just the panic about politics, the panic about the pandemic. And there's so much misinformation that people are taking seriously, and it's so frustrating, because people that I used to have faith in and I thought were too smart to fall for things that seemed like an obvious scam to me. But I guess for most of my life I've been an agnostic, because growing up where I did, it was more or less mandatory to go to church, and in Benson, North Carolina, that's Southern Baptist territory. So we went to the Southern Baptist church, and they're very demonstrative, passionate worshipers. They speak in tongues, they carry on, they'll go up to the altar and testify, and really it's such a spectacle. Even as a child, I thought, wow, this is outrageous, this is crazy. And I even asked my mom, I was like, what's going on? They act like they're possessed or something. And she'd sort of roll her eyes and say, well, they're just feeling the power of the Lord, because I don't think she was, she wasn't inclined to be that way either. But my dad was a Southern Baptist, and after high school graduation, I was on my own, and I didn't really have a church that I went to. I was focusing on my life in college and the freedom of getting out from under the family. And so I was pretty removed from spiritual things, but I've started to come back to that later in life, after the life I've led and the things I've seen and the people who have died around me. And it's had its, I mean, I of course I realize that I'm mortal. I think everyone has their moment when they're like struck down by reality. And what if you're in an accident? What if you develop some kind of disease, or and I've had that. I have an artificial heart valve. So I'm reminded of my human frailty and vulnerability. And I guess I try to maintain an open mind about spiritual matters. Certainly, this is a diverse world, and there's so many people with different opinions than my own. I like to at least hear them out.
Well, I'll say it, Scott. I think that you deserve a certificate, a plaque, key to the city, something, because I think that you're a hero and you have done so much more than most of us would, because all of us are so scared to like rock the boat or get into other people's business, or this day and age everybody's being called to names if you try and meddle or whatever, and you just didn't care, and you got in there and you helped find your friend, and I'm sure that did so much for his family. I'm sure that did so much for your community, and I'll thank you. I say thanks. Thanks for doing that, and you're an angel, and I'm so thankful that there's people like you in the world. So Scott, how has this changed your view on life?
I continue to keep an open mind. I think death is really just the beginning of our journey. I mean, the life that we lead up until our death is, it's influenced by so many things that are sometimes outside of our ability to comprehend. And I hope I always keep an open mind about spiritual matters and continue to learn and to grow.
So with us now is Vere Garcia. So what Vere does is she's a faith healer and she's a seer. So what that means is she's able to not only see spirits, but she's able to communicate with them to help families. Vere, for us normal folk or us regular folk that aren't like as intuitive as you or tuned in, how do gut feelings work?
Most people get gut feelings. A lot of times, even if it's someone that doesn't believe in certain things, bottom line is we all were created by God, and we all some people might call it intuition, like you mentioned, but it is a form of the Spirit of God trying to warn us about something. I think that sometimes the person might not know that, especially if they're non-believers or someone that is struggling with their faith. And so I feel like it sounds like he actually had the right intention and, use the tools that he had around. The only thing that I'm looking at is the fact that he just didn't know that how dangerous it can be to access to try to do something like that with the Ouija board. And I feel like most of the times it's just people not knowing. You're opening portals and you might get an answer about what you're trying to ask, but it definitely won't be from any source that is going to be a good one. But what will happen instead is that you might open a portal for demonic entities to come your way. So that's it. That's why it's dangerous. It sounds like he probably didn't know that, and he was just really trying to understand what his gut feeling was. I really think that it is important, for people to actually add a little bit more to their tool set, So in this case, that's something that he thought would be useful. But I wonder if he knew, that maybe right in the moment when he got the gut feeling, he can just spend some time in prayer and ask in prayer. I know, I get that sometimes the faith piece, the faith part plays a big part in what people will do or not do. But I think that if people know that it is pretty accurate, and I can vouch for it and say that whether if you're a believer or not, or if you are struggling with your faith or not, if you get a gut feeling about anything, prayer is definitely the answer.
So Vere, what are like some basic tools that you can suggest to some people if they're getting like strong intuitions or gut feelings or something like that? Like, what do you suggest that they do?
I think it might be different for everyone depending on the urgency of what they find in their heart and their spirit, and it's always just good to document, to write down what it is that you are, you're thinking or you're feeling, being very specific about what's going on. If it's a situation where faith is a little bit shaky for the person, maybe they've never heard the word discernment, but discernment it's a good word to even kind of get familiar with, because when you are dealing with gut feelings, discernment is definitely a big deal. So discernment, the way discernment works is, if you bring it up in prayer and you let the Lord know, say, God, give me the discernment of what it is that I'm feeling right now. Is it just I'm nervous because somebody said the wrong thing to me when I went to the market and I was shopping this morning? Or is this something that I should really consider to be, maybe my friend is in my mind because, I've been thinking about him and, and just that's a way to discern. It's the Holy Spirit of God that actually leads us, in that path of discernment. And at the beginning, it might be a little bit different if you're not used to that, but eventually you'll understand it a little more. I think that even if we don't really think that we have faith, or that we think, oh, well, maybe I'm agnostic, or I'm, with all of the respect talking about different beliefs, maybe I'm just an atheist. Bottom line is we were all created by the same God. So when we were born, we were all born with a sense of God, The Bible says we were all created in his image, and because of that, any gut feeling or anything that you get, that's the approach will always be the same. I mean, that approach will always bring you a little bit more than, resorting to like the Ouija board. I'm not saying it's nothing, I'm not telling people don't do this or don't do that, but bottom line is like, there's things that actually have direct consequences when you go there, and so I rather have the good consequence that comes from heaven rather than the dark one.
So talking to the dead, it's its own thing. It's not as easy as saying do it or don't do it, or it's evil or it's good. It's its own thing. There is things that you have to do to take precaution. You can't just go out there and try and communicate with everything, because you'll get yourself into trouble. But God is very vast in his wisdom that he sent us messengers. Let's just call them messengers until we get comfortable with understanding what things are. But you need to know how to identify that. And we're going to talk about that in this next episode, because Vere has seen spirits her entire life. She didn't ask for it. She's seen it since she was a child. And with that came a lot of persecution, because her family, her community, they didn't know how to deal with a child seeing dead people. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about if your kid's seen ghosts, what do you do about it? Because I've experienced it, and my gosh, do I have stories to tell. We're going to talk about what to do if you see a ghost. How do you know if it's a good ghost or a bad ghost, or if it's a ghost or not? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk to the experts, and we're going to dig deeper into what it is, like scientifically, what does it all mean? Okay, this is where we call it a day for today. I know you have a lot of questions, so do I. We'll try and get some of them answered in the next episode. For now, thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for not letting me be alone in this. I appreciate your time, and please like and share our social media pages. Let people know we exist, and I'll see you next time. This is Marcia Leja on the Quickening Podcast.